I know that you had spoken about it earlier this week, but if you could just give me Julian Edelman wrapped up in one sentence, how would you describe him?
Gritty.
That's a word, but yeah.
It's one word, gritty. That's what I would use. Simply just because that's what he had to be to make his NFL career a successful one. The guy was a 7th-round draft pick coming out of Kent State as a quarterback. And when he first came to New England, they primarily used him as a special teams player. And even at some points in his early stages of his career, they had him on defensive packages. There were plays where he would rush from like the slot corner position. I remember one in particular where he blitzed going after, I believe it was Vince Young, didn't get the sack, but ended up laying a pretty good lick on Vince Young in that Patriots versus Eagles game, I believe in 2010. And I mentioned in the YouTube video that I did a couple days ago about this, in the 2011 AFC Championship game, he was playing corner in the last drive of the game to figure out who's going to go to the Super Bowl to play the Giants in Super Bowl 46. That's how weak New England secondary was at that time. When you got Julian Edelman, who was a wide receiver and a special teams player at that point in his career, playing corner in the biggest drive, the biggest defensive drive of the entire season. And then slowly as the years keep going on, he becomes a full-time wide receiver by 2012, 2013. And that's where you really see his career as a receiver start taking leaps and bounds. And he was one of the most reliable, one of the most dependable targets that Tom Brady had when he was there. And it really does go to show when Belichick and Tom Brady sing their praises about how tough this guy was. Belichick called him a privilege to coach. You know, granted, Bill Belichick is one of the more indifferent people that you'll probably come across. He's not very emotional.
Yeah.
But he was glowing over Julian Edelman's career when he put out his statement after Edelman retired from the game this past week. And the same thing with Brady. And the one thing that I'll finish on before I'll let you take the case here. This guy was money in the playoffs.
Facts.
Every time he was there, he balled out every year and did everything he could to get New England back to the Super Bowl. And he was the major wideout that made it happen outside of maybe like Gronkowski. I'm just mentioning that because Gronkowski was a tight end and Edelman was a receiver. But a great Patriot. Now the question is, does he deserve Hall of Fame recognition? And I'll let you take that from here.
So obviously, me being the Colt fan that I am, playing against Julian Edelman in terms of like, you know, when the Colts played against him, or, you know, whenever I saw a primetime game and you guys were on there, I saw the confidence, the lack of fear, the intensity in his face. Pat McAfee was actually talking about it a couple of days ago. I was watching his show, and obviously Pat was our punter for quite some time, and Julian Edelman, like you said, was running back kickoffs. And when they were warming up, obviously Pat's kicking to his returner, and your kicker is kicking to Julian this way. So it's Pat and Julian side by side. Mm-hmm. And, you know, pregame warm-ups, stretching, you know, do whatever they're doing, their routine. Pat was talking about how he always engaged with the returner that he was going to kick to. You know the personality that Pat McAfee has. You shooting the shit, bullshit. Yo, what's going on, bro? You know what I'm saying? It's just that open, personable situation. And Pat was talking about a particular situation in which they were, or should I say, he was trying to have a conversation with Julian, and Julian kept it so brief and so one-worded that Pat was like, oh, like, I guess I can't fuck with this guy, like, whatever. And Pat kind of said, long story short, like, hey, listen, you know, I kind of have a reputation for, like, you know, if you do make it to me, I'm gonna lay you out. You know what I'm saying? Like Pat, obviously at that point in his career, had already made great tackles on return men, and Pat was one of those punters that actually went out there and did what he needed to do. And Julian basically his rebuttal to that was like, I'll keep that in mind. And Julian, I guess, and one of the punts in that game had an opportunity to truck Pat when Pat asked him prior, saying, like, try to juke me, don't run me over, don't make me look bad. And I guess Julian made a move and tried to make Pat miss and ran out of bounds instead, or something of the sort, to the point where he didn't run into Pat. And Pat ended up jokingly saying, thank you, I appreciate that. And Julian didn't respond. Julian and Pat met somewhere at a bar or somewhere at an event later in life after after Pat retired, and they were just somewhere. They talked about the situation, and Julian said to him, I should have ran your ass over that day. And their friendship kind of formulated from there. But it just goes to show when they're in between those lines, Julian Edelman gave no fucks who you were. He was going out there and he was going to make a play somehow. So to that, I give him so much credit, because he played through injury. He was aggressive, and he was undersized, and he was in a lot of cases undermanned. I mean, he wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the greatest receiver, but he made plays happen for you guys. And he was like, it was funny. It's like we talked about earlier in the segment, or should I say earlier in the episode, about someone preceding somebody else, like the transition of somebody coming into another position. Like I talked about with Luka and Dirk. You had Wes Welker, one of the greatest slot receivers in NFL history, and then you went right into Julian Edelman. I mean, granted, Wes Welker was significantly better in my opinion, but you had a great player to follow up, and it took Julian some time, like you said, to kind of get into that starting role, that consistent, Tom Brady target on third down, that reliable player. But when he got there, man, it was efficient, and Julian Edelman was a great player. However, here's where the debate starts. Other than his postseason accolades and him being a 3-time Super Bowl champion, I personally do not believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. There are plenty of receivers out there literally waiting to be put into the Hall of Fame that have significantly better statistics than him. And other than the 3 hardware championships, which do carry weight, but when you look at a receiver's career, the stats do mean a lot. So I don't think he is. And the stats show that. And I'm just going to reflect that really quick. I'm just going to talk about it. In Julian Edelman's 11-year career, he totaled 6,822 total yards and receiving. He totaled 620 receptions and 36 touchdowns. His postseason statistics, which is I know what you're going to bring up, so I'll get there before you do. He had 1,442 yards. He had 118 receptions, and he had 5 touchdowns. He has a Super Bowl MVP, had one of the greatest postseason, if not one of the greatest Super Bowl wide receiver performances I've ever seen against the Rams. But as you reiterated in your segment earlier this week, that was a snooze fest of a fucking Super Bowl. But he did his thing. And like I said, postseason-wise, he's one of the greatest receivers we've ever seen. For whatever reason, he turns it the fuck up in the postseason. But to further that, his catch percentage in the postseason was only 65.6%. Had some drops, some bad passes maybe. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I remember every single drop he ever had, but 65.6% is not the greatest percentage either. And, I have a counterpoint to whatever point you're going to make, but the floor is yours. I've made my case as to why I don't think he's Hall of Fame.
Because he played in games that actually mattered. Throughout his entire run with New England, granted it was a decade plus, in the time that he became a full-time wide receiver, he was the go-to target as far as the wideouts go on that team. And I know you mentioned Wes Welker. Wes Welker even has better stats than Julian Edelman here. But the one play that Wes needed to make in that Super Bowl against the Giants, couldn't make it.
Now, I remember that.
Now you could say that Brady could have thrown a better ball, but the reason why he threw him to his outside shoulder instead of his inside shoulder is because you had a safety coming across, and if Brady threw him inside, Welker would have gotten lit up.
I will never forget that play. That was one of the biggest what ifs that we maybe could have talked about.
Yeah.
Man, that throw, Brady made the adjustment that he had to, but I know what you're talking about.
It needed to be a back shoulder, because if he threw him in
Yep.
front of his shoulder, Wes Welker would have
Wes
gotten
Welker was
laid
dead.
out. Yeah. So Welker could have caught that ball. Julian, on the other hand, made those catches.
He did.
Granted, when you look at the Chiefs game against in the AFC Championship a couple years ago, granted, he had the one drop where it went through his hands and it led to an interception by Hunter Sorensen. Comes back and is able to convert some big third down plays in pretty solid coverage to keep drives alive that end up New England winning the game and then going on to the Super Bowl. In the Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl 51, makes one of the craziest catches in NFL history by catching it off of a ricochet from Robert Alford. There's 3 players diving for it, including Edelman. Edelman gets his hands underneath the ball, keeps the ball off the ground, about an inch off the ground, keeps the play alive, and maintains the catch and brings it in. You go back to the Super Bowl against Seattle. He had the game-winning touchdown. I know a lot of people think that, Malcolm Butler had the game-winning interception, and that's true. But technically, Edelman had the game-winning touchdown in that Super Bowl 49 matchup between the Patriots and the Seahawks. He's had phenomenal AFC Championship performances. I remember against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had a great performance against the Steelers. I believe it was the 2016 AFC Championship game. He had a great performance there. And mind you, I know his regular season stats don't necessarily show that, but we can even look to somebody like Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson is a Hall of Fame receiver. We both acknowledge that. But Calvin Johnson only has like 730, 750 receptions. I mean, Edelman has maybe 130 less of them. However, the significance of his plays throughout his entire career dwarf anything that Calvin Johnson did throughout his career. Numbers are cool, but the numbers have to have context here. Calvin Johnson, in particular, played for a subpar organization, and that's not his fault. But he left the game with years left on his body. Julian Edelman played until he physically couldn't play anymore. And when I look at somebody like Julian Edelman, granted, I know there are a lot of other great receivers that are in the Hall of Fame. I know Hines Ward is one of them. Hines Ward should eventually get into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I got a list. Don't worry about it. I'm ready for you.
I know. But when I look at Edelman's career and the significance of what he did in his career, I think it's worthy of at least a discussion for the Hall of Fame. Whether he gets in or not, time will tell. I think it's definitely worthy to have a conversation. I think to just completely shut the door on Edelman being a Hall of Famer, I think that's a little bit disrespectful, because I think Julian had a very solid career, a great career. And when you kind of put the numbers into the context that I just laid out, I definitely think that it's worthy of possibly making the Hall of Fame. I'll let you take the floor.
So I'm just going to quickly just run down something really fast. So Julian Edelman really didn't get into his starting role, like you said,
2013,
until about 2012, 2013. And I would probably lean towards more 2013 because he only started 3 games in 2012. And in 2012, he only had 235 yards receiving. So 2013, which I would consider to be his first full season, he had 105 catches. He had 1,056 yards, 1,056 total receiving yards, and he had 6 touchdowns. Unfortunately, that was one of 3 seasons he only eclipsed that mark, and he only had 2 seasons where he had over 100 catches. Statistics are a big thing in the Hall of Fame. I understand the significance of the plays that he made when they mattered the most, but you have to look at the integrity of an entire career. And just because you make big catches on the biggest stage doesn't mean that your career was incredible, because if you want to talk about that, Mario Manningham made one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history, but had an absolute dog shit of a career. David Tyree, one of the greatest Super Bowl catches in NFL history, dog shit of a career. So, yes, big plays are important, clutch plays are important, but so does the rest of your career. And there are a numerous amount of wide receivers that should be in this Hall of Fame that fortunately are not. And just for reference, so if we're going to count 2013 to 2020, and last year didn't even count because technically he only started one game because of injury. So Julian Edelman's actual career spanned only a total of 6 years that he actually played healthily. And a lot of years, he didn't even play a full season. 2013, he played 16. 2014, he played 14. 15, he played 9. His full season, his only full season, or should I say one of his 2 or 3 full seasons, was 2016. He started 13. He played 16. The next season, he played 12. The next season, he did play 16. And last season, he played 6. Anyway, to talk about somebody that's actually in the league currently right now that has better statistics, that has been in the league less, it's going to sound funny. It's going to sound biased, but it's just for the example. T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton has over 3,000 more yards than him, has over 24 touchdowns more than him, and is 22 catches shy of Julian Edelman's total. Does he have Super Bowl rings? Nope. Does he have clutch postseason catches? Maybe a few. But his stats blow Julian's out of the water, and he's younger, and he's been injury-ridden too. So I'm just saying, that's just someone that's in a predicament right now that if he were to hang it up right now, he has better stats, but he wouldn't get to the Hall of Fame because he has no postseason hardware to hang up for it. I'm just going to go over receivers that aren't in the Hall of Fame, and you named one of them. But I'm going to start with Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco. Probably the best footwork I've ever seen at the wide receiver position in my entire life. Chad Johnson had over 11,000 yards. Mm-hmm. Chad Johnson had over 700 catches. And Chad Johnson also had over, what am I looking at here? Hold on, I can't read. Chad Johnson had 67 touchdowns. Chad Johnson's mouth got him into a lot of trouble. Chad's last year in the league, unfortunately, ended in New England, where he didn't play a lot, if any at all. And then he actually got cut by the Dolphins before the season started with Hard Knocks in like 2014 or 15. So his career legitimately ended at 10 years. And Chad played for the majority of his career every single year. His rookie season, he only started 3 games. So, I mean, technically he only played 9 full seasons, 8 if you don't count New England. And he blows Julian out of the water in number-wise. Hines Ward.
I'm dispute that.
Hines Ward, you already know his. He's got a Super Bowl behind him. Right here, I'm bitter about it. Chad Johnson shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame over him. Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne got a Super Bowl, and Reggie Wayne got better stats. I don't want to fucking hear that. There is no debate. Over 14,000 total yards, over 1,000 receptions, 82 total fucking touchdowns. He may not have the records that Megatron had, but I don't want to fucking hear it. Reggie Wayne's career, Megatron's career, there's no debate. Reggie Wayne is a fucking better overall career. Y'all can slide into my DMs and debate me about that bullshit because I was pissed about that. But anyway, you got Reggie Wayne sitting there that was a snub, and you got Torrey Holt sitting as a snub. 13,000 yards, over 900 catches, 85 total touchdowns, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And he's got a Super Bowl. If you're going to tell me these players aren't in the Hall of Fame, and you're debating fucking Julian Edelman because he had a couple of clutch moments and 3 Super Bowls that Tom Brady willed him through, I don't want to hear it. These legends of the game aren't in the Hall of Fame. Bro, to me, if the door were to slam in that motherfucker's face and say, bro, you're not even welcome to the doormat, you can't even be mad. Bro, these guys are fucking iconic at the wide receiver position from the early 2000s and some of them in the early 90s that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And you debating Julian Edelman at 6,000 yards, bro? Again, I'm not denying the significance that he had on the field when he was there, but the integrity of his career, the build-up, the resume, if you gave me a piece of paper and said, job versus these guys' job, I'm giving it to them. Hands down, again, two of them were biased because they're Colts. One of them I just gave a reference because of the numbers. The other one should be in the Hall of Fame, and you know that just as well as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my debate to it. That's my end all right there.
I feel I don't dispute that those guys shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Those guys should be.
Oh shit.
I get it. I do. I think what Julian did though, and it's like I said, the significance of his plays in the playoffs when it counts the most, it means something. And when you look at somebody's totality of their career, what are you going to base it off of? Like, how much are you, like, if you're talking about, like, let's say, like, for example, like, if you're grading an essay, okay, how are you going to weight it? When I look at the weight of an entire season, the playoffs is where it's at. When you get to the, not just the wild card round, the divisional round, when you get into the championship games and the Super Bowls, did you step up and play your best football at the biggest moment, at the biggest stage of the game? Julian did. Granted, he does not have the stats of somebody like Reggie Wayne, Hines Ward, Torrey Holt. Those guys, to me, are Hall of Famers. However, when you look at Julian did his damage when it mattered the most. And I'll say this. Granted, he is not an outside receiver. He's not a what you would consider, I think it's an X receiver. He's not like Randy Moss where he's burning down the field just because his athleticism is just on another level. But when you look at where Julian started and the career that he's had and the versatility that he brought to New England, mind you, this guy played every side of the ball. Defense, special teams. Most of his career was on the offensive side of the ball. He made it work no matter where they put him. Mind you, when he was on special teams, I believe he had 4 or 5 punt returns for a touchdown. I think he set a Patriot record with that. So when you look at the versatility of Julian Edelman, that's one thing that he has over all of those guys that you just mentioned. Because
he has 1 punt return touchdown.
No, he doesn't. He has more than that.
In 2012 to 2018 regular season punt returns, he has 1 total touchdown, no kick return touchdowns. In the postseason, he has none. Oh wait, that's T.Y. Hilton. Sorry, my apologies, Cast. My apologies, Cast. He has 4.
Yeah, because I remember one of them was against Pat McAfee, and then another one where he got it. Because I remember I just watched the highlight the other day, and then the other one, the one that he got the Patriot record on, was against the Broncos. So he had 4.
Yeah,
that's the one.
My apologies.
No, you're good. You're good. But that's something that he has over those other guys. Now I understand that Calvin Johnson, they'd put in on like the last play of the game. If somebody was throwing a Hail Mary, he'd try to intercept it, and I know he has those plays. I didn't see Calvin going out there playing defense when they needed somebody to step up. Julian did.
They needed Jesus the entire integrity of his career, so him playing defense wouldn't have done shit.
So I'm just saying, I mentioned it earlier. Do I think that we should just shut the door on Julian being out of the Hall of Fame? No. And mind you, he just retired. He's going to be eligible in 5 years for the Hall of Fame. So there will be plenty of more time to see, whether his case improves or it degrades. I'm just saying, don't shut the door entirely just based off of the fact that he only had 630 catches, 6,800 yards, and 35 touchdowns. Look at the significance of those numbers, though. You have to add context to those numbers, and they are extremely vital to New England's success the last half decade.
The door's closed for me, but I respect your opinion. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you, I respect everything he's done and all of his plays.
And I'm not being biased here. I've watched the guy play.
No.
Like,
I know.
So Granted, I'm not disputing like the guys that you brought up before. Those guys are Hall of Fame players. It's just the way,
Bro, Torrey Holt's been eligible for fucking almost 10 years and he's not in the league. Are you kidding me? Hines Ward retired in 2007. It's been over 10 years.
It's just, I think that there are more ways to get into the Hall of Fame than just one route, just through numbers. Granted, I understand you have to include significance with the numbers. And that's the part that I'm focusing on here. I think with a lot of people that are just dismissing Edelman, they just look at the numbers and say, oh, well, right there, you can't even keep him in. You can't put him into the Hall of Fame with those numbers. Look at the significance, though, of those numbers. That's what I'm saying.
I know.
So without Julian Edelman, there's no way that New England would have won those 3 Super Bowls from 2014 to 2019. It wouldn't have happened. Edelman was instrumental on the offensive side of the ball to get those Super Bowls back to New England. And
yeah, I mean, 2014, he had 281 in yards and he had a touchdown. 2015, he had 153. 2016, he had 342. 2018, he had 388. So, yeah, no, he makes a big difference in the postseason for y'all, for sure.
I'm just saying you can't just throw those out.